I know that State fans they cringe when you talk about it in these terms. And I'm not even saying that NC State is a top 4 team in the United States. I'm not. But we all know what the schedule is set up to do. And it's kind of front-loaded. Not that there aren't losable games throughout, and there are. But their two biggest, most daunting tasks are in the first 4 of the season. Tennessee and Charlotte, Clemson on the road in week 4. But why shouldn't State fans be thinking, this is a year, not that we can just win 10. I think that's the low way of looking at it. This is a year that we can contend. Like for, everything is maybe a strong way of looking at it, but this is a year where we can contend. Why shouldn't they be doing that?
They should. It's what happens after week 4. It's the challenge that not just NC State has, but that any team with expectations, any team that looks around and acknowledges what's in the locker room. When Casey Concepcion, the reigning ACC Rookie of the Year, is sitting on the ACC Network desks with Eric McLean and EJ Manuel and Taylor Tannenbaum, and he's talking about inside that offensive meeting room, looking around and knowing that Noah Rogers came here from Ohio State. That is a talent level. That Hollywood Smothers came here from Oklahoma. There is a talent level that is there. That Jordan Waters, has been extremely effective at the ACC level. And Grayson McCall set an FBS pass efficiency record back at Coastal Carolina. I think an NC State fan should be thinking, okay, we know that Tony Gibson is one of the best defensive coordinators in the country, period. And that there's been a level that has been established ever since he came in and took control of that defense. But you do have some exits, obviously Peyton Wilson at the very top of it, as being significant. And so as you go into that game against Tennessee, which has a legit Heisman contender in Nico Iamaleava and a wide open offense that's going to score 35 to 40 points a game, is your defense ready for that? When you go up against Clemson, and who has the best defense in the ACC, and they're breaking in a finally healthy group of wide receivers. Cade Klubnik's got a lot more experience with Garrett Riley. What's going to happen there? And maybe when you do start to get a little bit tested, like maybe when Syracuse is a little friskier than you expected, are you going to be able to go get those stops against 1,000-yard rusher LaQuint Allen and a future NFL star in Aronde Gadsden? It is the fact that every other piece of that is part of the bigger picture, but you'll know right away whether they're ready to go in those first 4 weeks.
Yeah, and that's my point. I'm not sitting here predicting they're going to go 11-1 and then beat Florida State in the ACC Championship game in Charlotte. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it's okay, and I think honestly, I think it's appropriate to think, man, if we win in week 2, it puts us in a different part of the conversation. And I'm not saying you're going to be favored. I don't think they'll be favored. I think they'll be a slight underdog to Tennessee in Charlotte. By slight underdog, I mean they could be a touchdown underdog to Tennessee. But I think it's a game based on their talent level. I just don't think that we should be looking at it, but it's NC State. Just like I don't think we should be doing that, even though we have more reason to doubt Miami based on coaching decisions in the past. And yes, we have been here before with Miami seemingly on paper being good, but should Miami be in the same position?
Miami has a more talented roster than Ohio State. That's not even a question.
And people think that Ohio State is
not Ohio State. Excuse me. Whoa. NC State.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. Woo. Miami's got a much more talented roster than NC State. Miami has maybe the most talented starting 22 in the ACC. Your only reason to doubt Miami are the evidence of every single time that Miami has shown up with a roster that is among the most talented in the ACC and not been able to deliver.
And Mario Cristobal at Oregon when he was there.
I mean,
right.
When did Justin Herbert turn into a star? It wasn't when he was wearing the green and Kelly green and yellow. there have been so many years that Miami has started the year where they are starting now, which is inside the top 25, just inside the top 20. You see the talent, and yet they've only finished in the top 25 6 times in 20 years. And they've never finished in the top 10.
Right.
They've got to go get the job done. They are going to be right now betting favorites in 11 of 12 games.
They're favored against Florida in the opener.
Yes, they are narrow favorites against Florida in the opener, but this is a tremendous test of the age-old rivalry between Miami football in the ACC era and expectations. So we'll see. I love their roster, and I am terrified because of the scars of history.
Do you love Clemson's roster, or are you not as bullish on the Tigers?
I've got Clemson as my ACC champion.
Really?
Yeah. So there were some players last year that were thrown into the fire. I mean, I'm talking about a freshman defensive lineman named Peter Woods, guy that came out of Alabama. I'm talking about, Khalil Barnes. I'm talking about Avion Terrell. I'm talking about TJ Parker, another defensive end. And these guys were just super talented, and because of injuries, they had to go and contribute. And they were, at the end of the season, much better than they were at the beginning of the season. At the end of the season, Clemson won its final 5 games of the year. At the beginning of its season, I guess they went, 4-4? Yeah, 4-4 followed by 5-0. Yeah. I wonder if there's some carryover when all the true freshmen finish the year strong and now come back set to be stars. I think that Clemson is going to be so good defensively. The offensive line is going to improve with the hire of Matt Luke as their new offensive line coach.
I remember him.
I think that while Dabo Swinney may be stubborn about the transfer portal, he has at least shown his willingness to break up his relationships with some of his assistant coaches. And I think that it is not the offensive coordinator hire of 2 years ago, but the offensive line hire of this past offseason that can be a big difference maker. Throw in a true freshman wide receiver named Bryant Wesco Jr., who I think is going to be a candidate for ACC Rookie of the Year. And I just think that Clemson's going to be sitting right back where Clemson's not going to be at 2016, 2018 Clemson, but Clemson's going to be at like Taj Boyd Clemson, where they were the best team in the ACC and a problem for a lot of ACC teams. Now, when they go and they have to play Georgia in week 1, they will probably be outclassed.
Yeah.
But when they get into the rest of their schedule, I think they're going to win a lot of those games.
That's if Georgia can put a full roster on the field. That's another story altogether. All right, final thing for you, Chip Patterson, CBSSports.com, Cover 3 podcast. If the ACC can take 2 of those 3 high-profile games, So let's say this way. Clemson plays Georgia really tight. Right? We don't need to laugh. Clemson plays Georgia tight.
Okay.
Which in the opener, honestly, anything could happen because it's the opener.
Sure.
Miami beats Florida. State beats Tennessee. I know it helps. Does it change the narrative for the rest of the season about ACC football?
State beating Tennessee is the most significant because Tennessee is a team. Tennessee is a really good team with a superstar quarterback that is going to have games against the other best teams in the SEC that are going to be spotlight games. And when Tennessee is playing Oklahoma, when Tennessee is playing Alabama, when Tennessee is playing Georgia, then they flash that schedule on the screen of what's happened so far this year. If that L is to the North Carolina State Wolfpack, then that will carry more. Because Florida's not going to play in those kinds of games, and it doesn't matter what the final score was. Unless Georgia loses, then you're just going to look at Georgia held serve. I mean, when Georgia beat Clemson in the game that kind of broke DJ Uiagalelei, wasn't the score like 10-7? I mean, it was just a low scoring.
It was a defensive touchdown too, right? For Georgia, it wasn't even an offensive touchdown. Yeah,
and so it still carried a lot of weight, especially on the Clemson side of things. So to me, if you're talking about conference-wide impact, NC State, Tennessee in week 2 arguably would carry more than Miami, Florida, and Clemson, Georgia.
My only counter to that is that Clemson and Georgia were at two different spots. Clemson was still theoretically up here, and Georgia was more on the rise, so I think it was looked at differently. But your larger point is 100% spot on, as it always is.